Welcome to Critical Junction, episode 74. I'm Mark.
I'm Mary Louise Parker.
And I'm... Joe.
Well, alright then. And recently, Netflix, for some reason, produced and aired a documentary series that serves as an extension of Gwyneth Paltrow's so-called modern lifestyle brand entitled The Goop Lab. In it, Paltrow and her team explore a wide range of controversial alternative health topics, including psychedelics, energy healing, and communicating with the dead. To their credit, the show includes a disclaimer at the opening of each episode, informing viewers it's meant to entertain and inform, and not to provide medical advice. This, however, is not enough to assuage the concerns of medical experts, who worry the show's claims are misleading or even patently false. While the show actually includes some reasonable content, including the study of psychedelics as a means to treat PTSD and the therapeutic benefits of MDMA, something researchers are beginning to seriously explore, it nonetheless contains a healthy dose of pseudoscience. This is especially apparent in the 5th episode of the series, which focuses on using quote-unquote energy healing to treat mental health issues. In it, participants engage in a, quote, somatic energy healing practice, end quote, whatever that is, with chiropractor John Amaral. Setting aside for a moment how chiropractic practices are themselves mostly pseudoscience, the primary controversy of this episode centers around Amaral's claim that somatic energy healing can, quote, heal physical injuries, reduce stress, anxiety, and depression, and reach and sustain new levels of energy, clarity, and fulfillment, end quote. Amaral also asserts the human body is made of a particular kind of tissue that can bind up and store energy, and the energy flow formula can, quote, return that energy to a free-flowing state, end quote. According to Dr. Jennifer Gunter, an obstetrician gynecologist and outspoken critic of Paltrow and the Goop brand, or in other words, an actual medical practitioner, quote, that's made up. I don't know what that means, end quote. Not to be confused with the powerful automotive adhesive of the same name, the Goop brand itself is far from without controversy. In 2018, prosecutors in California sued the company after consumer watchdog Truth in Advertising compiled a list of 50 false or misleading claims on the brand's website, the most infamous of which were jade and quartz eggs that were advertised as being able to prevent uterine prolapse and enhance women's sex lives when inserted into the vagina. This resulted in Goop paying out a measly $145,000 and offering refunds to the people it swindled. Needless to say, I share the concern of health experts who worry viewers of the Goop Lab, who are more susceptible to magical thinking, will be unable to distinguish advertising from science and embrace the unfounded claims made in the series instead of consulting a doctor. An overwhelming number of assertions made as part of the series are at best misleading and at worst dangerous, and as we've said on many occasions during this show, the time to accept a claim is when there is sufficient evidence to support it. In many instances, the claims made by both the Goop brand and the new Netflix series are completely lacking in any manner of evidence, scientific or otherwise, to justify their acceptance. So, what is it about Goop that makes it so attractive to certain people? And is Netflix doing a disservice to its viewers by having greenlit the series? Let's talk about that, shall we?
The cynical side of me really likes that Goop is kind of the living embodiment of fool and his money are soon parted. But then the less petty side of me is just sort of incensed by the fact that Goop is legitimized, is allowed to be.
See, that's my problem with the series. It legitimizes this bullshit wellness company, and it makes it seem as though there's some actual benefit to it.
Did you hear that thing where they said that the prices on their website for some of the stuff they're selling, like a $200 fasting kit? Which just
$200 fasting kit.
It sounds paradoxical
Buy
to
this
me.
so you eat less.
What?
If any kind of diet should be next to free, it's a fasting diet.
How does that work exactly?
No. And what they say on apparently the Goop people have said about their prices is that they're aspirational.
What does that mean?
Exactly. I'm like, what?
The prices are aspirational?
How is this their argument or their justification for the prices? And how have people just accepted that response?
$200 is the aspirational price. Well, all right then. What? I don't know what that means, but here's my money.
I'm gonna say.
Does that mean that I'm able to offer $10 for these things you're charging $200 for, and you'll accept it?
Or we just
maybe
aspire
you can
to
negotiate. So I don't know. You
I
have to
wonder.
try.
Yeah, I wonder
Give me an
if
egg.
it's. If
I want
it's
to put it in my vagina.
Give me an egg.
They have a $10,000 or $15,000 dildo on the website.
Oh, do they?
A
Really?
gold, pure solid gold dildo. It's basically like a gold ingot shaped like a penis that they sell on their website. Yeah.
May I ask, what's the format of this show? Because I'm confused
It's a
by
docuseries.
it being entertainment and information.
It positions
so
itself.
there is no line there
No,
being
no,
drawn.
it
or
positions
anything?
It's like
itself
self-help.
Yeah,
Right?
it positions itself as a self-help docuseries. So in each episode, they explore one particular topic, like the energy healing thing, or the female pleasure episode was actually decent. You know, that was some real science in it.
You learned something there?
I did. I learned how to pleasure myself.
The hilarious
as a woman.
Yeah.
But no, that had some decent material in it. But then you get into things like intuitiveness and communicating with the dead and this crystal energy healing bullshit. My main contention was
no tree angels?
No,
You've been delved into tree angels?
they came
like
dangerously close to the tree angels.
Very close. They had a medium in the last episode.
Yeah,
that was...
and she was training people how to harness their mediumship skills.
That's it, yeah.
And
my God, you sent us this event that's happening in Ottawa where people
Reiki.
can learn to do Reiki on their pets, on animals.
Animal Reiki is coming up.
They said they'll have a few cats and a couple of budgies available at the event.
Spare pets.
Yeah, some spare pets.
For you to practice.
On.
So you don't ruin your own pet.
Yeah, I know.
You can practice on this budgie.
A budgie. A budgie. How would you be able to identify any?
To me, actually, the thing that's always confused me about people who have birds as pets is that, like, of all the pets that you can have, the ones that I find are least expressive are the ones covered in feathers. Like, I can't scrutinize their moods.
Have a bird.
I know you have a bird. To me, I don't get it. Like it's almost like having a fish to me. Like
this one does things.
Does it?
This one does things. Fish don't do anything. They just swim around and then swim around some more.
And then they die.
I can't read their eyes. Those little beady eyes of birds.
You're not supposed to.
I need to be able to read the eyes to be able to connect with another being. I get cats and dogs, but
with birds though, I can see some character there. Like in watching birds outside the window, I can see that the blue jay is an asshole. Chickadees are friendlier.
There's definitely some surprising like behavior that's being recorded and scientifically kind of cataloged now. That shows that birds are way more intelligent than we traditionally give them credit for.
So anyway, this energy healing episode, which what spawned the bird conversation.
Yes. We digress.
There's a part in this, and this really pisses me off. It's the kind of Deepak Chopra kind of bullshit claim that we always tend to see in these episodes. Well, the whole double slit. The double slit experiment is
that
evidence
fucker.
that
as soon as he said double slit, I was like,
can you guys elaborate on this
dry
double
heave
slit thing?
Okay.
Oh, but more vomiting.
Yeah, more fucking vomiting. God, everywhere there's vomiting all the time now. Like, for some reason.
So the claim was that the double slit experiment proves conclusively and scientifically that consciousness can affect reality. Which is not what the double slit experiment set out to do.
It bugged me actually that he added those superlatives about it being unequivocal and proven beyond a shadow of a doubt now.
Yeah,
that consciousness affects reality.
I know
you're gonna have
reality.
Well, that's a good point, but that's not at all what the double slit experiment.
Not at all.
So yes, please go ahead and give us like
the original
a nice tight.
This is going to take some explanation, so bear with me. The original double slit experiment was supposed to demonstrate the wave particle duality of light. So this was done in like the 1800s, where they set up it's a little thing with two slits in it, and they project a beam of light onto a receiving screen at the back of it. And if light behaved like a particle, what you would see would be just like two lines where the slits are of the different particles hitting the back screen. And if it were a wave, you would see an interference pattern behind it, right? Where the wave goes through the slits and ripples on a pond.
Like ripples on a pond, yeah.
Yeah, you get this interference thing. But what they ended up finding when they shone light into this double slit thing is that you get both, right? So you get a scattering of particles and then the wave interference pattern as well. So what quantum physicists did, now we're getting into the quantum weirdness that people like to cite as evidence that consciousness can affect reality. Fuck you. They decided what would happen if we shoot an electron through this double slit thing. So they shot a single electron through the double slit, right? And what you would expect to see is it going through one or the other of these two slits. But what ended up happening is that due to quantum weirdness, the one electron occupied both spaces at once and interfered with itself to create an interference pattern on the receiving screen at the back, right? So what they wanted to do was set up little sensor things to determine why it was doing this, right? And what they found was the act of observation altered the state of the electron that they were observing. But what we mean in quantum physics when we say observation is really just measurement. Right? So the thing doing the observation doesn't have to be conscious. It could just be a sensor or a receiver or a telescope or like a magnetoscope or any type of device, right? Consciousness does not enter into the equation whatsoever in this experiment. But
that hasn't stopped kooks and
woo peddlers,
fraudsters from claiming that very thing.
Yeah, because they see observation alters the state of that which is being observed, backing up the uncertainty principle, and they're like, consciousness!
Yeah, because they're thinking with their colloquial, non-expert brain, thinking, observation is no different from conscious perception and subjectivity.
Right.
And then they start thinking all gooey, and they're like, subjectivity is the ultimate in physics. And
so when you're watching this show, this documentary, these people are... can you recognize whether or not you feel they're shysters, or if you feel like these people really do believe this?
This guy...
I think their heads are all up their asses, and they all believe it.
Yeah.
I don't believe...
You really do think they believe it full on?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this guy was like totally convinced that consciousness affects reality because of the double slit experiment. No.
I think they're arrogant enough to think that they're right.
Well, hold on.
No matter what
I
they're
feel...
peddling.
I feel like, and I think that this delves into a territory of, what were we talking about last time? I don't remember our last podcast.
The Stargate Project.
So I remember having the same issue where it's like, how would we deduce whether or not things are real? Because you guys are very staunchly no. Well, you, for example, Mark, are very staunchly no.
I'm staunchly no. Consciousness doesn't have anything to do with the double slit experiment.
But I feel that this is just as unscientific as declaring yes.
Well,
to so staunchly say no. I just mean that...
I feel like that sounds like both sides are bad or hurt or...
I'm just saying that...
It's not equivalent.
It's not equivalent. No, I'm not saying it's equivalent. I'm not saying you're maybe more right, but still wrong.
The reason why I'm saying no so adamantly is because at no point has there ever been any kind of evidence to suggest that consciousness has an effect like they're claiming it does.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
That's why I'm saying no, it doesn't. That's all.
I'm still curious, though, as to why ideas arise and why people go off to believe something. And we're so very quick to say no to things without having created any sort of scientific rules or the game of the science that we would use to investigate. We haven't done that thoroughly, and so I don't think.
Well, in what context?
In this context, for example, I'm using this context.
Like the consciousness thing?
Like us.
Yeah, the consciousness thing. And I'm not saying. What I'm saying is, I'm not saying it's a yes. I'm just not saying it's a no either. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying that we have to develop a means of investigation that is clear and concise.
When I say no, I'm being pragmatic in that there is no evidence to suggest it does.
Right. There is no evidence.
Right. So that's when I say no, that's what I mean in this context.
So therefore, it's negligent.
To present it
or
as
pernicious to say that, to act as if there is evidence of it.
And the way
in the absence of evidence, you have to assume the negative, right?
That's the null hypothesis.
Well, you don't have to assume the negative, do you?
That's the null hypothesis.
You have to operate on the assumption of the negative.
You have to.
Yeah, it's not that it's not that you close yourself off from being presented with evidence that would contradict that, but the idea is that You just can't operate as if something were true when all evidence available to you does not demonstrate that is true.
Yeah,
and what I'm getting at is...
The null hypothesis is that the result doesn't exist until it's demonstrated to exist.
Mm-hmm.
There's a problem in the ability to recognize, though, that arises by feeling that we have the accumulated knowledge that we don't necessarily have of something.
But see, I find that like that bugs me. There's an equivocation where we seem to be often equating both just withholding assent with pretending that one of two 50-50 options is right arbitrarily. Because it's not like both are equally founded to hold. The null hypothesis is like, this is basically the baseline, and then stuff gets added that flips you over to the other side.
Right.
So it's like if you have two things stacked above the other, the one thing is the pedestal, which is the null position, and then stuff can get added on it, and it's standing on that null hypothesis. You know what I mean? Whereas the other thing is like two options side by side, and you're just choosing to go left or right, and it doesn't really matter if you just go straight to the right or straight to the left.
I'm still conflicted with the ability to recognize something. Like I think of Einstein being presented with the mathematics behind the Big Bang by whoever that scientist was. That was a religious dude.
Georges Lemaitre.
That guy.
Yeah. The guy who
Einstein
came up with the phrase
Einstein went great math, but no kind of thing, right? And so why is that? It's because he couldn't accept it.
Well, initially he couldn't relegate his ideas about the universe with that hypothesis, but he came around to it when he was presented with sufficient evidence to back up
more evidence, though. So what I'm saying is
sufficient evidence.
Sufficient, right?
To
so
him.
More evidence.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that a lot of evidence is preliminary in the initial stages of something.
In that case, the thing to do is to withhold belief, right? You should only accept a belief when there's sufficient evidence to justify it.
The only thing I'm attacking here is what appeared to be a hard stance of no, this definite no, because you present your no with an attitude.
Well, yeah, because it bothers me when people present this double slit
experiment act like they know something that they don't.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
I understand. The hard no is at them and what they're doing with it.
Right.
Not necessarily
it's a reaction
the thing itself. It's a reaction.
It's a reaction to what they're presenting, right? If they're going to come out and say consciousness affects reality because the double slit experiment says so, I'm like, fuck you, no it doesn't.
I guess your upsetness is in their bad science.
It's their bad science and the bad conclusions that arise out of it.
Right. And I guess I'm harsh towards us coming to any conclusions due to their bad conclusions. You know, I don't.
Yeah, but come on, you have things that you're totally willing to say, okay, that's dumb, or, you know, that's ridiculous. It's not like you're entirely open to all attitudes or all agendas equally, right? Like you have standards of your own that you apply to things that you analyze in the world, right?
Yeah.
You don't accept all things equally, do you?
Well,
I've seen you
laugh don't know.
At stuff as if it was stupid.
No, I never laugh at things like they're stupid. No, never. No, I laugh at this show all the time. But do you see the point that I'm getting at, though? I want to make sure that we're also not providing bad science out there with jumping to conclusions and saying hard no's to things, because
I think as long as we just keep it to laughing and decrying obvious oversteps. You know what I mean? Like, as long as we're not laughing at somebody who's coming to a different conclusion. We're laughing at somebody who's coming to a conclusion when all information says that no conclusion is possible.
Right. Or that particular conclusion is possible.
Right. That's it seems to me that we can parse this quite easily. It's not a zero-sum game. It's not all arbitrary.
Right.
It's not all subjective. And I mean, you're not a nihilist, right?
Would a nihilist know?
Would a nihilist know?
If they were nihilist?
Maybe. I might not even be using the term nihilist correctly. I'm just thinking of a nihilist as someone who thinks that...
You're not a nihilist, are you?
I'm thinking I have maybe a prejudicial understanding of what a nihilist might be, which is just to think that everything is equally unfounded.
Okay, so I
sort of nothing is founded.
I would suggest that I'm not a nihilist. It's more akin to agnostic. I'm
right.
I remain skeptical of knowledge itself, sort of thing.
And that's fine because
and I see the distinction there.
Yeah.
There is something, I don't know what it is. It's the Taoist thing.
Right. But to some extent, can you think of anything that
fish
that you are sort of certain about?
That I'm certain about?
Or like that.
Operationally certain, or
I guess, or just convictions. Do you have any convictions?
I would suggest the only convictions, if we're speaking in terms of certainty,
even if it's moral rather than
right. Well, this is where I was going to go. I love that person, and I know that kind of thing.
Yeah,
so I can say that, but that's about the only territory I would go into is more so being sure of how I feel about something. Even then, that fluctuates too. You know what I mean?
Right.
When it comes to the actual world, and can I claim any certainty? No, I think I lean towards Wittgenstein's sentiment there, where certainty isn't actually a thing. It's something that it's something that we use to go day to day.
Like we can be pragmatically certain about certain things, but reaching absolute certainty, I don't see how that could be possible.
We're not.
I don't think any of us disagrees with it, really.
Right.
But that's a difficult thing to face, and it's not something that we look at very often. Right. We generally move through life.
So does that mean
basically being certain anyway?
Does that mean what you're arguing is that these Goop people, for instance, can just as easily be sort of have their own pragmatic kind of pragmatic certainty while also maintaining a kind of an intellectual agnosticism on.
Well, I have no idea what these Goop people are doing. It sounds like they're just trying to sell shit, and they're retards. So I mean,
well, the thing is, so
I was trying to be harsh there for humorous reasons. So I'm sorry for using the word retard. But,
Had it with your
like it sounds like they're selling something. So, for example, we're not harmful with our opinions of things because we're just not selling anything.
No, we're not selling anything.
Someone can listen or they can not listen, and we don't want any money. But if you'd like to send us some money, Mark, where can we?
Goop, if you'd like to sponsor the show.
Yeah, so Goop, if you'd like to sponsor the show.
Take payment in jade eggs.
Or gold dildos.
Especially gold dildos.
Yeah, I get paid exclusively in gold dildos.
I do. I would love one. Absolutely.
Just so you know, Mark's eyes lit up. He was very excited about a gold dildo.
I'm very excited about having a gold dildo.
Yeah.
Especially if it's an ingot-sized gold dildo.
I like to stir my spaghetti sauce exclusively with gold dildos.
I'm being the podcast watchdog though, to make sure that we ourselves are not expressing too much certainty here.
Right.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay. But what they do is they express certainty about things that are completely unfounded and just lacking in any kind of credible evidence to support or justify that amount of certainty, right? Like the medium at the end of it, she was certain about her abilities. But as I was listening to her giving this reading to this one person, how she's saying like, if there's an L in the name that I'm getting, I think it's your mother or whatever, and she gave you a piece of art, it's on your wall. Now, I'm thinking about my own mother and applying all of these things to her.
And it's working.
Like,
there's an L in there.
There's an L in my mother's name. That my mother gave me that piece of art. It's on my wall. So I'm like, was she reading me? No, she's just putting out Barnum statements that can apply to anybody.
Yeah.
You know, and
now hold on though. Now, when you're watching it, and it's very difficult to tell when they're good at it, whether or not they actually believe it, or if they are bamboozling someone.
What's funny about
that's what I'm always interested in when I'm watching.
What's funny is when she, like, before she goes on to do this, she specifically says she's not cold reading and she's not using Barnum statements, which I find.
And then she goes on to specifically use those techniques.
Right.
Which I found hilarious.
The funniest thing to me in that episode, like what really jumped out at me was like when she was fishing and asking the person about, okay, so I'm picking up someone on one of your two parents' side. I mean, she says your mother's side.
Right.
She seems to always go for the mother's side first when in her speculations or in her fishing. And then if that doesn't work out, then she goes to the father's side.
Right.
I think I saw her do it 3 times on that episode. But maybe that's just the way it was cut together. Maybe that's just coincidence. Anyway, she asked the person about her mother's side, saying, is there anybody on your mother's side or grandmother's side that has passed away? And I'm thinking, we are all biological entities with a lifespan of a mere 80 or so years.
So she's
on average.
Don't we want to go? No.
Doesn't 100% of us have somebody on our mother's side way back that has died?
No one in my family has ever died. They're all hundreds of thousands of year old vampires.
Is she expecting all of her customers to be vampires? What the fuck is she talking about?
She's just fire hosing. Like, is there
everybody has somebody on their mother's side that's dead because everybody on their mother's side from 3 generations back is dead.
Yeah.
Is there someone on either your mother's side or father's side who has at some point passed away?
No. No.
So that really bugged me.
Oh, let me think about that. No, they're all... Yeah, it was ridiculous.
And the Barnum statement thing was really clear, too, when... or actually, maybe... I'm not sure if that specifically qualifies as a Barnum statement, but I think it does. When she asks the person about twins, I'm picking up twins. Are there twins in your family? Or is there anybody that has been born in one of the 12 months? that happens to have the twin astrological sign there.
On occasion
Gemini.
breeds.
On occasion. Who's alive
it's one
right
of those,
now.
It's one of those 2.
Right.
You know, that covers about fucking 90% of people.
Is there somebody in your family who is currently alive?
So my curiosity when it comes to these types of things that are in a sense very unprovable, how do we develop a science to look at it, to investigate it? Like these things that you, Mark, are always curious about and in a sense want to believe in. Mm-hmm. You're curious about them. So there is an interest there.
Right.
Now, I would suggest that if there wasn't an inkling of possibility that it could be true in your mind, you would not be interested. If it, possibly, like I don't think you're just attacking people. Well, yeah, maybe you are. I was gonna say I don't think you're attacking people just because they're wrong, but no, maybe you are. But I do think that there is a curiosity there, and I think it's a curiosity within you.
I like
because you want it to be true, or.
No, it's because if it is true, I want to investigate it and see, is there anything to it,
Right.
And to answer your question about how can we devise a science in order to test it and whatnot, that's what the JREF did. They set up a bunch of test conditions specifically designed to explore psychic ability.
Yeah.
Right. I can't name them off the top of my head because I haven't been to the site in ages.
Yeah.
But
one test that had been done was to measure. The psychic healing, so the people who do the hands floating, like the guy in the 5th episode, was it? Where they float their hands above the body and like Reiki, right? That kind of stuff. And you're changing the frequency of the energy in the body by thinking really hard and floating your hands
by thinking really
around
hard.
somebody. And so they actually did tests on people who claimed to be sort of psychic healers, where they had them like put their hands through a couple of holes like in a screen that prevents them from being able to see either of their hands, and then somebody on the other side would be there like holding their own hand over one of the two hands, and then just asking the psychic healer to just simply tell them which hand has the energy flowing and which hand has the...
Let me guess. Results were no better than chance.
Results were no better than chance. Yeah, exactly. So it's a super simple test, and I think that particular test was devised by a 10-year-old child, actually. Come up with this actual like blind experiment that scientifically demonstrates whether or not something is valid.
Well done, kid.
Have you ever heard of the case of Ronnie Hawkins being cured of cancer?
Yes, you told us the story.
So he found out of a kid in BC that used the visualization technique to seemingly cure people of things and do things for people. And I think all he asked for was a photograph or something like that. And so Ronnie Hawkins, in desperation, went, all right, let's give it a try. And he claims it worked.
Okay.
He no longer had cancer.
Here's the thing with that. We know that cancer spontaneously goes into remission, right?
Yes.
Okay. How did they determine that didn't happen in this case?
I understand. I understand that is true. But what if... What if it is possible,
sure,
and how would you be able to test it?
How did they determine that it's possible?
Yeah,
that's what I want to know. How did you reach that conclusion, right? And then once you explore that avenue, then you can start developing a test for it.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not saying yes.
I know.
But I'm also not saying no.
I'm not saying
You're leaning more no.
I'm leaning more towards no because, like, although I'm ambivalent on this particular case, I am leaning towards no because we know that cancer goes into remission. We do not know that it's possible to cure someone remotely by visualizing them through a photograph.
Not to mention we can't repeat it.
We can't repeat it.
Yeah. In a sense, I
One
don't know how we could possibly prove it.
Failure to be able to be repeated is what kind of tips the scale.
One of the staples of the scientific method is repeatability. Like if these types of phenomena were actually doable, they should be able to do it repeatedly under test conditions.
With this criteria, then, in a sense, what you're saying is things aren't true unless they repeat. So something that only happens once isn't true.
No. Like the results of an experiment should be repeatable. That's one of the staples of the scientific method.
But is that not the case, though? That in a sense, what we're saying is, if something only happens once, we can't prove it to be true.
Not necessarily. If something happens once, it happened, right? You don't know what it was.
Well, we can't prove it, though, is what I'm saying.
So something could happen once, and we might have evidence both of the effects of that single occurrence and we might have evidence of the causes leading up to the occurrence.
Right, yeah, there are multiple things.
But there are, of course, occurrences that we have evidence for neither.
Right.
And I think those, by definition, are things that we can say we don't have we can't prove that single occurrence happened.
It doesn't mean it didn't happen. It just means that we
don't have evidence of it.
What I'm just getting at that it's difficult to prove things sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yes, I get that, and I totally concede that. I also think that people underestimate the extent to which certain things are provable.
Right.
They underestimate the concept of proof or evidence. They pretend like proof and evidence are almost fictional terms.
Who's doing this pretending?
I don't know. People who think that everything is on an equal footing. Mm-hmm. Like your being wrong is just as valid as my being right.
What's this? Who are these equal footing people? And what?
I don't know.
Feet look like? Like who thinks this way? That things are equal.
There are a lot of people out there.
A lot of people who follow things like Goop and alternative medicine.
Yeah, people who say that truth is relative. Your truth is just as good as my truth.
The people who are sinking more money into
classic old school sophists with Socrates.
No, not even. No, I'm thinking anybody who sinks more money into alternative medicine than in real medicine.
Right.
is saying that.
Yeah, because
they're saying
there's an equal possibility that this alternative medicine thing could possibly be. So if it's possible, then I'll go for it. Look, we haven't even demonstrated that it is possible, and yet they're taking this belief and their leap of faith, and they're just applying.
And they're draining their bank accounts.
They're draining their bank. Right. Yeah, they're doing more harm to themselves and potentially others by accepting this when there's no.
Not only that, but they're bankrolling the fraud to continue.
My favorite from the holistic medicine is the vibration it captured in liquid, and then you take a little droplet. What is that called?
That's
homeopathy. It's water.
Yeah.
That one is hilarious, capturing the vibration.
Yes, that's absolutely retarded. I mean, ridiculous. And you are indicating that you recognize that it's ridiculous, right? You're willing to laugh at that.
You can't backpedal now.
Yes, but I'm also willing to laugh at all sorts of things. So I mean.
But do you think there's any value in homeopathy?
Value in homeopathy.
Validity. Do you think it's
validity?
Validity. Do you think it's an actual, like, can you get some kind of result out of it? Like the intended result of curing, let's say, the common cold by taking this little thing of homeopathic water?
No, I mean, I can't say I would believe it. No. So I say a no there, but it's a soft no. It's not an angry no or anything.
So it's the same pragmatic no that I'm using when I say no, that's ridiculous.
It's just less angry though, Mark. It's less angry.
It's just less angry. That's it.
No, you're right. I mean, the no happens naturally. I just
think
can't.
The problem that you actually have is not so much like a philosophical or argumentative problem. It's more just a problem with the tone.
Well, no.
Am I too aggressive in my no?
The truth is, I am curious about this concept of the vibrations of things and the recordings of these vibrations of things. It's an interesting idea. I'm curious. It seems like someone just took the idea, did it quickly, and then sold it.
Thank you.
And there's no research behind it or any evidence of anything.
Well, that's my problem with it. Like, there's no research behind it. There's no evidence to support it. So my gut instinct is just to lash out and be like, "That's fucking bullshit." No. But I am curious about it, and I'm still open to examining the evidence. Like, if there's some evidence presented that and turns out that this is possible and the whole vibration of the body thing is valid, I'll accept it.
Well,
right?
I mean, that is what we are, right? We are, when we look at things, vibrations happening, right? Am I wrong? Like, if we reduce things to... if we're looking at things at a quantum level, go into this quantum level thing?
No, not the quantum level.
Well, let's do it, though. What relevance does size have to do with anything, right? So let's go look at the quantum level, and is it not vibrations?
But the problem with doing that is that the quantum world is not applicable to the macro world.
That's confusing phenomena and behaviors in the macro world with phenomena in the micro world. Like the vibrating strings that make up a particle don't necessarily affect
the moon,
whether or not the cat decides to go to the litter box or not.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
well, there's a hell of a lot of stuff in between there. There's a hell of a lot of other vibrations there.
Like the probabilistic position of an electron around an atom has no bearing on whether or not the sun will rise tomorrow. It has no bearing on the bricks that make up my fireplace. It just doesn't.
Mark's got a fireplace.
Things exist on the quantum level. They do weird, freaky shit that we don't understand. And it's just completely baffling and just it's counterintuitive, right?
Right.
But just because it's spooky and weird doesn't mean that consciousness can affect it, how did you reach that conclusion? How did you determine that? Where's your demonstration of that being a possibility, right? Until you can demonstrate something as being possible, I do not accept its possibility. That doesn't mean I think
not accept its possibility?
No, that doesn't mean that doesn't mean I think it's impossible. I just do not accept that it is possible until it's been demonstrated to be so.
I wonder how our consciousness would shift if we were, for example, dying of cancer or something like that. How willing we would be to go, okay, let's try this liquid vibration droplet in my mouth.
Doesn't that kind of like desperate state just lead to less rigor rather than more.
What do you mean less rigor in terms of what?
If you're about to die, and you become more open to some other possibility because of it.
Out of desperation. Yeah.
You might be doing it out of desperation or out of just like it doesn't fucking matter.
Let's try it.
Like let me just let my brain grasp at cosmic straws right now because this is it.
Yeah.
See, I would like to think I would still apply my skepticism if I were dying of cancer, but I don't know. I don't know how I would react. Like maybe I would just start grasping at straws, like you said, being like, "Okay, I'll try the homeopathy and see if it works."
And I think that this example that I gave of what's his face,
Ronnie
Hawkins, like he himself didn't believe. He just went, "Well, what's the harm?"
Yeah, but I mean, how many other celebrities did the same cosmic straw grasping and failed at it because they weren't part of that percentage that we already know can get healed or whatever spontaneously or because of some other variables.
Well, I know that Bieber tried to cure himself of being an asshole, but he just looked at the picture and went, "No."
Yeah, see, exactly, perfect example.
But he just didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it.
No, that's right. Yeah, he wasn't open to it.
He wasn't open to it.
Yeah. Or like, but the what's that comedian there that
Larry the Cable Guy.
No, but Cable Guy.
Gary Shandling.
No, what's the movie Cable Guy?
Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey. So Jim Carrey played the Man on the Moon guy.
Andy Kaufman.
Andy Kaufman. He did that. He went to India trying to get his
cancer. That is what I was thinking of.
Cancer,
his desperation while he's trying to cure himself. Kind of thing.
And that failed miserably. He died, right? Or
did he?
Did he?
Or did he? That's another podcast.
Yeah. And what else? The Apple guy.
Steve Jobs?
Steve Jobs. He did the same thing. He went to Mexico, I think, for some kind of
Did you get psychic surgery?
I'm not sure if it was psychic surgery or just some other kind of kooky alternative medicine that just didn't work out. And
another problem with these kooky alternative medicine things is a lot of times they have the exact opposite effect. They're harmful. They do more harm than good. You know, that people like intercessory prayer, for example, has been repeatedly demonstrated as being more harmful to the person than not praying at all.
There again, we would need another person to see what would have happened without it, sort of thing. You know, you would need.
Well, they've done it.
Intercessory prayer is one that they've actually done controlled experiments with.
Okay.
Yeah. And
they have the non-prayer group and the prayer group.
The invalidity of it.
Yeah, the non-prayer group did better than the prayer group.
So, have you ever heard of these tests where they have people working out, like physically?
Yeah.
And then they have the other test group not working out.
Okay.
And then they have another test group of people visualizing working out.
What?
Okay.
And then comparing them to see muscle mass and what has occurred. Okay. So the test group where they did exercise, their muscle mass improved 28%. The ones that did nothing, 0%. And then the ones that visualized it, for some reason, 24%.
What?
And these stats, I mean, these stats are coming from Gloria here, so I don't know where she got these from, but she was telling me about this.
24% of them gained muscle mass, or they gained 24% of their muscle?
So the muscle mass was gained. There was a change in muscle mass.
In 24% of them, or
the muscle mass had
4% of muscle mass was gained.
Was gained.
In each person doing the visualization?
Well, I mean, honestly, I don't know what these test groups were. I don't know anything about I'm presenting this as some stats that I heard about. I don't know anything about their validity or anything like that. Right? I don't know anything about it.
I would need to take a look at the methodology.
But this is what I'm saying. Does it make you curious?
It does.
And what if that is the case?
Yeah. I mean, it's not like we we don't know that the placebo effect is a big thing that actually has
that's right.
some effects.
So the holistic medicine thing does have the placebo effect behind it.
Sure.
The mind power. I mean,
but the placebo effect will only take you so far. Eventually, it just stops what it's doing.
You can't violate the laws of physics. You
Right.
can. There's conventional kind of physical processes happening when you tend your mind to certain things. Like we have thoughts and we're able to send impulses to our nerves and contract and our muscles and all this kind of stuff. So there's physical processes happening there that we initiate with our mind, right?
So
but that's not the same thing as my consciousness sort of beaming an effect to something outside of my body, right?
No, you're right.
Yeah. I'm just trying to clarify the idea that the placebo effect isn't an indication that consciousness affects the outside world in the way that the guy who was talking about the double slit experiment
perhaps
was
not in that
implying.
way, but I think that if we think hard enough, we can come up with some examples of consciousness affecting matter.
How?
Other than your own body, or
no, even just that, your own body kind of thing. Simple examples of consciousness.
But it's not like you're beaming the thought from your mind to your knee.
Have they not done
through the air?
experiments with
It's electrical
your
impulses.
thought is sending electrical impulses through the nerves inside your body down to the knee. It's not like jumping from your head out into the space of your living room and then back into your knee.
Have you ever seen these photographs of, I believe it's snowflakes, and you've got a guy meditating and sending up beta waves and stuff like that? That's used as an example of consciousness affecting matter.
What?
Yeah, I can't remember
Because
the details of it, but that was like some kind of viral meme thing.
And so there you're seeing the microscopic supposed effects of consciousness.
I have no idea. I have to.
You don't know what I'm talking about?
No.
He thought this and then it appeared this way. He thought this and then it appeared another way, sort of thing. And they're suggesting that it affected water on a quantum level, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I would need to see the details of that, because just on its surface, I mean, we're all familiar with the concept of every snowflake being kind of unique, right? Like there's some randomness.
Yeah, I think it was water or something like that, though.
Yeah,
not a snowflake. I don't know.
Well, it's
I'm
water.
coming at you with some real doozy facts here.
It's crystallization of water when it freezes, right? And it creates different kinds of patterns.
Yeah, I have to take a look at the methodology again. Just look at the research that this thing came out of before I can say, well, I don't know. So I don't know. I don't know.
And there again, I'm still weary of our ability to recognize. We would lean more towards the things we already believe than let's say we're looking at something and it's split. We can in a sense we have to choose to believe or not believe because it's not exactly clear, right?
The default position is to not believe.
Is to not believe.
Yeah.
Right.
Until you're, again, like I keep saying, presented, until you're convinced.
In a sense, you have to be presented with an overabundance before you can switch over.
Not necessarily. Like, you can leap to a conclusion, but that's really not the way to do it. Like, you should formulate an opinion based on the available evidence, and if there's a sufficient amount of it, then you become convinced of a certain thing, right? So, yeah, I don't know where I was going. I just derailed my thought train.
There you were just basically pointing out that the leaning is always the no until it's until basically it's a clear yes.
Yeah, the default position is just to not accept a claim until there's reason to accept it.
Each person, I would suggest, probably has a different gauge there.
Of course,
a different
everyone
flick
has,
switch.
Everyone has a certain set of tools that they use in order to arrive at a conclusion. The point of this show is to give people the proper tools to do that, right? Like.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the point of the show.
I think the point of the podcast or whatever is to champion those kinds of tools.
Oh, right, champion. Yes,
sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Or at least to champion that kind of attitude or respect for non-arrogant and valid reasoning. But I think what you're getting at is that there's a spectrum, right? And we might not be putting that cutoff point at the same spot on
right,
the
we
spectrum.
wouldn't, of course. It's
Right?
not a clear spot. It is a spectrum, yes.
But-
So there's some things that we operate pragmatically, even on an assumption that they're true, even though we don't necessarily have enough evidence to say they're true.
Right, but not all claims are created equal. Right?
Exactly.
Not every claim will have the...
Ultimately, that's where I go on it. Yeah.
Right, yeah. And not everything will have the same burden of proof that needs to be met in order for you to accept it, right? The more outrageous the claim gets, the bigger the burden of proof, right? If you're going to claim that
Right.
dinosaurs and humans existed co-equal and side by side or whatever...
What was the famous Hitchens quote on...
Well, the Hitchens quote is that which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence.
Right, yeah.
The Carl Sagan quote is, I'm blanking on it. Fuck, I know this.
Something about... something about, like, the most fantastic things require the most fantastic evidence or something like that. Yeah, totally blanking on it.
Why am I blanking on it?
I love Carl Sagan quotes.
I
Come on,
love
guys.
Carl Sagan quotes. Yeah.
It's funny because Carl Sagan was always considered the flaky scientist, was he not?
The flaky
like
side.
Was he? No. He was kind
I feel
of...
like in the 70s he was. This was what I grew up thinking, I guess. That's what I had been exposed to. That he was the flaked out like weirdo scientist.
The flaked out weirdo
Well,
scientist.
yeah. And in later
Why don't
life,
we turn Voyager around?
Extraordinary claims
Extraordinary
require
claims-
extraordinary
Thank you.
evidence. That's the one I was...
Fuck, what the hell is wrong with us?
It's kind of a corollary to the... or Hitchens' quote is kind of a corollary to that one.
Yeah.
I find.
Hitchens razor.
Yeah.
Love it. Anyway.
in a sense, I guess I feel like we're never really dealing with truth per se, but functionality. What purpose can this use, and what can we do with it, and how repeatable is a thing? You know, everything in a sense is a tool, or can be a tool.
At the very least, I think that there should be a place to mock arrogance and.
But we're arrogant.
Oh yeah, we're yeah.
Monumental.
But I'm not afraid of having other people like you, for instance, mock anytime.
I'm not very good at mocking.
Anytime I go into that arrogance, right?
You mock me pretty much every episode from my area.
Well, I try.
I try. But I think arrogance deserves mocking, whether it's coming from myself or anyone else. And I think that some types of arrogance are more pernicious than others. The kind of people that are actually steering folks away from medicine, which is the treatments that work, versus alternative medicine, which just isn't medicine.
Right.
What gets me, though, is the people who...
treatments that don't work.
Is the people who will flip what we're talking about, and say that, well, traditional medicine and scientists are monumentally arrogant in their certainty about, well... Because they have the evidence to support it.
But they also are, look at how much chemotherapy has killed people over the actual cancer.
When you
I don't know if you've looked at these stats, but I mean, chemotherapy has killed possibly more people than cancer has. No, I don't know if that's true, but a lot.
I don't know if that's true.
That is monumentally arrogant.
Let me give you some stats. 7.
That's a stat.
Just 12.
Oh yeah, my stat is minus 13.
Oh.
What does that say?
It means numbers and conclusions based on them.
In conclusion, minus 13.
My final thought. Minus 13.
That clapping left a bunch of really cool spikes on the audio track.
Nice.
All right, well, final thoughts on this Goop thing, the Goop Lab in general, Gwyneth Paltrow.
Well, it sounds like what do you call it back in the day when they would sell a tonic out of the
Snake oil salesman.
snake oil salesman. That's
Get
all it
that
is.
up. Get your Goop here.
That's all. It's basically a documentary.
It's the same thing, yeah. But those people should be derided and mocked because they're doing damage. I think they're doing damage. They're like, you're taking advantage of somebody. You're relieving them of their hard-earned cash under false pretenses, and you're giving them false hope.
$145,000 worth of false hope.
My final thought is that these are bad things, and it's not to me. It's not just an arbitrary kind of like or dislike thing. I think it's actually wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I gave the show a chance. I watched it as objectively as I could, right? And I recognized that there was some value to some of the things they're saying in a couple of these episodes.
Right.
Like
in that you even continued watching, because it sounds like
I watched the whole thing.
Yeah, you watched the whole
like
thing.
Like an entertainment value, or
Hmm?
What value? Entertainment value?
No,
or?
no, like the for example, the female pleasure episode. Like
Oh, right.
Mike liked that one.
I did.
Because the first episode was about
Hold on.
And,
Yeah,
Are you telling me that women can enjoy themselves?
What?
Inconceivable. But yeah, there was value to that episode because there's so many cultures out there still that don't give a fuck about what are you doing? That don't give a fuck about female pleasure, and they shame women because of the way they feel. Like the whole. Never mind, I'm not going to get into it. But the first episode with the mushrooms and the MDMA stuff and the psychedelics, there's some value to experimenting with that because it's been shown to, in small doses.
Although I wouldn't call what they were doing experimenting per se.
Right. What were they doing? Can you elaborate on what they were doing?
They just went to some retreat in Jamaica and
did a bunch of shrooms.
Unregulatedly just did a bunch of shrooms.
Oh, yeah.
Came back home.
Some hippie stuff.
It was totally uncontrolled, totally unscientific.
Hardcore hippie dippy shit.
Yeah.
Like it just with the drapes on the walls and things and the pillows and the circles and
Have you guys experimented with hallucinogenic, like these hallucinogenic drugs, I guess?
I've done mushrooms before.
Salvia?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, salvia.
You tried salvia?
Yeah, I mean,
you, Mark? You? Salvia, I've never done it before, but I hear it's difficult to get going in a sense. You have to heat it up a lot hotter than a lot of other.
Yes.
So it doesn't always occur. It doesn't always work.
You don't always get the trigger, right? But if you do it properly.
Did it work?
Yeah, no, it did.
Was it a heavily concentrated one? Was it an X4 or an X7?
It was an X15, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I wanted it to work, right? So
Yeah.
Let's make sure it does. I didn't go for like the 100 or whatever.
How would you describe the trip?
I had to write it down when I finally managed to wrap my head around it, and like the way I described it I wish I could find the text, but I described it as I was part of the universe's infinite machine, and I was existing as part of something that had no beginning and had no end.
Yep, sounds great.
Does that have anything to do with the people who eat other people's faces off in Florida?
No, that's bath salts.
That's bath salts, right? Okay.
Salvia used to be legal. Like you can just go buy it at the local head shop.
I didn't know it wasn't legal.
In must have been 2008, I think. Or no.
Really?
No, like it was made illegal a couple of years into the Harper era.
Oh, fuck, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Really, in Canada? I thought maybe the States and stuff like that, but really?
We followed them after.
Oh, fuck, I didn't know.
Because some stupid kid fell out a window in the States and they're like, well, gotta ban it now, so fuck. Thanks a lot, kid.
Huh.
But for the longest time, it was readily available at the local head shop, right? So
it is just an herb, so yeah, you can
it's
just grow
sage.
some. It's sage. You can grow it, but I believe you have to really concentrate it, like boil it down.
There's an extraction method to it.
Right.
It usually involves like a high-proof alcohol to get
right.
dry it out and do that.
So it just gave you that whole oneness with the universe, kind of.
Is that all it did, Mark?
It's it's a disassociative. Like you lose.
It does sound kind of weird to be so dismissive.
Is that all? You're just one with the universe? That's it?
But you lose. You completely lose your sense of self. There's no I anymore whenever you get into one of these salvia trips, right? It's just you're part of existence. Is the only way I can describe how I felt.
Yeah.
Right? It was super weird. Super.
You lose all ego.
Yep. It's an ego destroyer. There's no I now. You're just the universe. It's just fucking bizarre.
And in a sense, don't you feel that you can only sort of look at it after the fact?
Yeah.
While you're there, it's like you're not thinking.
Yeah.
It's a different thing altogether. In fact, it's more like an abandoning of thought.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, you can only really reflect on it in retrospect.
That's spot on.
Yeah.
Would you do it again?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just to compare experiences.
Do you feel like there is something to learn from that experience? Do you feel like...
No.
No?
Not really.
You don't feel like it...
It didn't give me any great insight into myself or any of that. It was just a really interesting experience, I think. I'd do it again just to compare the first one to the new one. I don't know.
It's funny. It's purely scientific. I would just want to look at my mind then and then look at it again doing the same thing.
Yep. Compare results.
Okay, still one with the universe. All right.
Okay. Well, I want to see if I would be...
Okay.
I want to see if I'd be one with the universe again or fly off to some alien world or whatever. That would be really cool.
Well, sure, yeah. The visual accompanying could be any sort of unconscious,
right.
dreamy type image.
And like maybe doing it again, I would have some insight into myself. So sure, yeah, maybe new experience.
Well, hold on. In doing it, you abandon yourself. What's this reflecting upon yourself? There is no self when you do it, kind of thing. So when you're coming back, then you would only be reflecting upon it when you're yourself again, right. In a sense, right? So that doesn't count.
That doesn't count.
Because you're only doing it afterwards, after the fact. There is no doing things while you're on it. You know?
Except just sitting there and like losing your mind.
Yeah. Well, I feel like what is it? Thomas Aquinas? Is that the old priest guy?
Yeah.
the old monk guy.
Yeah.
But he would go into trances.
Okay.
And then he like for days, and then he'd come out of it going like, yeah, everything I've ever said is total bullshit to considering what just happened to me just now. You know, can't explain. Sorry, guys. You know.
So how would you describe your shroom experience? Oh, sorry, did I cut you off there?
No, that's fine. I had nothing to fucking say anyway.
How would you describe your shroom experience? Because I've never done it. I'm curious about it.
Okay, so it's funny. I've tried ecstasy, which was a lot more similar to what you described with your salvia experience in the that sort of perspective of connectedness and just being one with the universe kind of thing. Or
I don't know.
I got that kind of a sensation from it,
but without the ego dissolution.
I'm not sure if it was complete ego dissolution, but it just there was sort of an ego dissolution in the sense that I'm no less or more than everything else, but I guess I did retain a sense of that I am, you know, like.
Okay.
But with the mushrooms, it was much more just a perceptual trip. I laughed a bit. I could see patterns moving and stuff. Like I had that kind of hallucinating movement in my visual perceptions. But aside from that, I think I didn't do very much of them, and it was maybe a very light trip. But I had a bit of that. It wasn't all that impressive.
Right. I think of my mushroom trips compared to the acid trips, for example. And mushrooms, it's more sort of up and down as you're going along. So you ebb and flow in and out of it, sort of thing. Whereas with salvia, you go straight up.
Yeah.
You know, with acid, you're going straight up as well, sort of thing. A little slower. Salvia, I believe, only lasts like maybe 10, 15 minutes.
15, yeah. Mine lasted about 15.
That feels like all of infinity, though.
Yeah.
Turns out.
Yeah.
All of infinity in 15 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. That's all?
That's all.
That's all.
Like it feels like when you're first coming up on it feels like you're being pulled aside kind of thing, and then you're just gone. It was really weird. Anyway, perfect lead into our next episode on psychedelics. Next time on Critical Junction.
Is that what we're doing next time?
Okay.
We're doing psychedelics?
on the show live.
On the show? All right.
Yeah. Anyway, final thought for the Goop thing for me is pretty much the same as you there, Jill. I think they're doing a lot of harm with this, like just peddling unsound kind of alternative medicine with no justification for it and robbing people of their hard-earned money. You know?
Yeah, I guess my big curiosity with something like that is always whether the person authentically believes it or if they're just a shyster.
Right.
Like, it's more interesting when they actually believe it. I become curious about their own psyche and what got them there and how is that possible.
The other thing that bugs me, though, is the negligent idea of whether they're neither completely believing it sincerely, nor are they specifically intending to bilk anyone. They're just negligent. You know what I mean? Like the idea that they just don't give a fuck.
Right.
Like they're like, hey, this stuff is out there. Why don't I sell this stuff too? Because some people want it and whatever. You know, maybe it'll work for them, and I don't care. And whatever.
Yeah.
You know, like I find that.
I think Slavoj would be on your side for that one.
Really?
He would be like, yeah, no, you need to make some decisions and decide what side you're on, basically, and fight.
Fight.
Nice.
This has been Critical Junction, episode 74. I'm Mark.
I'm Mary Louise Parker.
Still?
I'm Joe.
Yeah, sure, still.
As always, thanks for listening, and until next time, keep thinking critically.